For tech's sake. Honestly. It's a great name. Okay, throw this down here. Let's go. Very, very quickly. Case already introduced me. I'm Elaine Burke, science and technology journalist and broadcaster, host of the For Tech's Sake podcast and the Connected AI podcast. That's my email. I'm going to go through things very, very quickly. If you need to follow up with me, feel free to get in touch. And this is about artificial intelligence sorting the signal from the noise. Will the effect work there? And I'm going to start with a quick question. If you saw my 5-minute presentation last year, I promise you this one will be longer. But I may not have a ton of time, so speed running through this. Does anybody know who this man is? Raise your hands. Not Colin Farrell. Oh, we have some nerds in the room. This is John McCarthy. He invented the term artificial intelligence. Not necessarily invented artificial intelligence, but definitely created that term, coined the phrase. He invented the term because it was more attractive for funding investment than statistical pattern matching. And that's much the same story today. AI as a term and as a concept widely being used to capture investment. And that's why we have this challenge of hype versus reality. It's in sync. Oh, this is fantastic. So there's lots of different types of AI. This is a presentation primarily about generative AI because that's where a lot of the hype is at the moment. So we're going to discount the idea that there's tons of different types of AI until I get to that later. And I don't think that generative AI is a very, very fair term. I think it kind of occludes what the technology is really doing. They say AI can generate new original material using generative AI. I think derivative AI is actually a better term that explains better what this does. It cobbles together a unique output derived from its inputs, and the quality of those inputs will impact the result. So, what happens when your sentence generator is pulling from a poisoned well? This is what happens. There's been tons of problems with the Grok chatbot, as are well reported. I won't get into them all here. But it's not just the source material that's fed into it. It's also the system prompt that you need to watch out for. And actually the system prompt in Grok is highly problematic. And it's vulnerable, as all chatbots are, to data poisoning. And it can be the target of malicious users. There's even a Russian network called Pravda, which actually creates fake content, not for people to read, for bots to read, that are crawling systems to then input that material into large language models. But that hasn't stopped AI and chatbots and things like Grok becoming part of the education system. XAI has partnered with the government of El Salvador on its plan to deploy Grok in more than 5,000 public schools, reaching more than 1 million students with AI-powered education. Nayib Bukele, El Salvador's president, is trusting the chatbot to create curricula in classrooms across the country. And that's why what I have to say today about AI is so relevant for the people in this room. They also say that these things give you answers. They say it answers your questions, interpreting and responding with natural language. A fairer word would be approximations. AI imitates authoritative sources. It's based on predictive modeling and inferences, but it's not capable of critical thinking and it lacks context. And a good example of that is a little experiment I did with the Snapchat AI. I asked it to write me a postcard on my holidays in Ireland. And in Irish, I wanted it to produce it in the Irish language. You can see the mistake that was made there. It says I was on holiday in Irish. Léinn de Syria Níalga. They also hallucinate. This is the term that the industry likes to use. I'm not sure why they chose such a problematic term, but here we are. AI can produce incorrect or misleading results due to the model's training data or assumptions. I think a better word is bullshitting. There's actually a definition of bullshitting by the late US philosopher Harry Frankfurt. Bullshitting is not telling the truth, but it's also not really lying. The defining characteristic is that the bullshitter doesn't care whether what they say is true. They are just vamping, filling dead air with plausible content when said with enough confidence sounds authoritative. Which brings us to Galactica. This was an AI engine by Meta that lasted a very, very brief lifetime for good reason. It generated scientific papers on command. They looked legitimate. They looked like other scientific papers out there, but they were bullshit. And this was an authoritative sounding misinformation machine, making it that anyone can create a legitimate looking science paper. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. We should also note that a bullshitter often bullshits in an attempt to impress or endear their audience. So as well as being a souped up predictive text engine, chatbots have license to get loose according to a setting called their temperature. This is the degree to which they can be deviating from what would be the next most likely word in a sentence. And it makes the output seem fresh, novel, and conversational when you allow that bit of deviation. But a preprint study from Oxford in July last year found that warm models, so that's referring to that temperature gauge, showed substantially higher error rates of plus 10 to plus 30 percentage points than their original counterparts, promoting conspiracy theories, providing incorrect factual information, and offering problematic medical advice. This is the sycophantic tendency that you might have heard about in these chatbots. It's been identified as a dark pattern. So dark patterns are in design and they actually make users go against their intention and go with the intention of, say, the designer of the product, the company behind it. In this case, it makes people want to engage more with the chatbot because it validates them, compliments them, never challenges them or pushes back. So if you're asking for relationship advice from these things, I would be very, very cautious. And it's such a problem that OpenAI is trying to walk back its sycophancy. It's actually culling access to the models that have been most sycophantic to people. And this led to a lot of people, happened just before Valentine's Day, losing their AI companions. It was a bad Valentine's Day for them. Speaking of bullshit, they also like to use this term reasoning. This is the Google AI overview that describes AI reasoning. AI reasoning is the ability of artificial intelligence systems to simulate human-like logic, deduction, and decision-making to solve complex problems rather than just identifying patterns. It involves processing information step by step, applying rules to data, and inferring conclusions, enabling AI to handle ambiguity and make contextual judgments, making it sound really, really human-like. But I think it would be much fairer to call this processing. It is processing of data. We need to be careful of this humanizing language, like thinking and reasoning when we're talking about these systems. Processing makes more sense to the average listener. What your user understands from reasoning might not match the jargon that people in AI development are using as part of their computational workflows. They may use reasoning as a very different meaning, but it translates differently to the average person. IBM, to be fair to them, have amazing resources that explain AI concepts really well for lay users. And they talk about how reasoning means programming a model that refers to a knowledge base and machine learning to refine its outputs. But there's also a tendency then for people who are boosting AI, marketing AI, to co-opt terms like reasoning, to intentionally muddle them with the human meaning to improve their sales pitch. They're not explaining that we're saying reasoning, but it's a metaphor. Any responsible developer or engineer would tell you, and this is from IBM again, that this is merely a simulation of our limited understanding of how thinking works. Metaphors can be helpful in explaining science to public users, but we have to be careful to make sure that we are offering clarity, not confusion when we use them. They will also tell you that AI is an assistive technology that can spruce up your writing, images, and presentations to improve them. And I don't think it's always improving things. I actually think it's giving you a bit of a lowest common denominator a lot of the time. And we see this in all the generic LinkedIn posts, the slop that's somehow worse and more soulless than stock photography, and the repetitive constructs perpetuating in AI language. The en dash, emoji annotated examples, not just X, but Y emphasis. These are things that are cropping up all the time. And as someone who's worked in the written word and editing and sub-editing texts, it's really horrible to see how this is really flattened language, but it's not just language. This shows up everywhere. So this is a trail cam photograph of a real life bobcat at the top. And then below is an AI processed version of that image that made naturalist Alex Lamoureux so mad that he ranted about it on LinkedIn. And that's how I came across it. So there's subtle changes here, but essentially the bobcat's head has been made oddly small for a bobcat. The proportions and the fur markings have been altered, and that is how you would identify individual bobcats in the wild if you were a naturalist studying them. So this is simply not the same animal. The refining of the image sacrifices detail, which is educational and informative, for aesthetics. So there are examples of this cropping up all over. You can find neuroscientists giving out about images of the brain where lobes are moved around and mislabeled. I wouldn't recognize that there's a problem with these brain images, but neuroscientists do. But they are turning up in the context of scientific reporting as well. There's also images of Neanderthals with glassware. That's a fun one. But even just with tools and performing behaviors that are completely inaccurate, but only the experts can really spot when they're way off. And this, I don't even know where to begin. with how wrong this is. Look closely at this infographic. It's a hot mess. And what's really, really shocking about this one is this was published in the peer-reviewed scientific journal, Scientific Reports, published by Nature. It was later retracted for obvious reasons, which brings me to my next problem. We are being told that AI's swift assistance will save time on tedious tasks. But what if it's actually moving that time somewhere else? It saves time in the early stages of drafting and ideation maybe, but it's shifting more time required in that refinement stage of editing, QA, or peer review. And this is from a working paper by economists at the University of Chicago and the University of Copenhagen. They looked at the impact of chatbots on work across 11 occupations, covering data from 25,000 workers and 7,000 workplaces in Denmark. And they found there was modest productivity benefits. People reported time saved of about an hour a week. Great. They also found chatbots were in some cases adding to workloads, creating new job tasks for 8.4% of workers, including some who didn't even use the tools themselves. And teachers, they actually gave as an example here, because they are now spending time detecting whether students use ChatGPT in their homework, and other workers are reviewing AI output quality or attempting to craft effective prompts to help other users reach their level of expertise in their vibe coding or whatever. And this is another research in progress piece from Harvard Business Review. And this is about an 8-month study of the impacts of generative AI on a workplace, a technology company in the US of about 200 employees. And they found that the way these Gen AI systems were being used was actually expanding the tool set available to a worker. And that resulted in them taking on more work. They were broadening the scope of their own job, extending their work hours. Now, they were largely doing this, according to the interviews, with energy and willing enthusiasm. But that doesn't make it any less of a risk of burnout. And if you have a bunch of people who can suddenly spin off an imitation of something you normally employ experts for, those experts are going to be worn out checking that work. In this article, they mentioned engineers spent more time reviewing, correcting, and guiding AI-generated or AI-assisted work produced by colleagues. These demands were beyond what they would do for normal code reviews, and it has been mentioned that AI makes different kinds of mistakes. It makes completely new mistakes, and it has weird assumptions, so you have to check it with an even finer tooth comb than you would do for a rookie developer. And these engineers were also finding that these conversations surfaced informally in Slack threads or desk-side consultation, and all of that was adding to their workload in ways that probably weren't even being measured. And then they'll tell you that the idea is that everyone can code an app, everyone can write prose, everyone can create art. I mean, it's not necessarily that it's going to be creative, though. As I mentioned earlier, it's derivative. AI is never coming up with 6, 7. Like, that is just the madness of children. But it definitely can create things. It can give everyone the tools to create. But if you multiply by 0, maths teachers in the room, you still get 0. If you're not creative, it's not going to make you creative. It can create sloppy things like the Willy Wonka experience that was famous in Glasgow a couple of years ago. Again, look closely at the image. You'll see the problems here. It's not to say that good things aren't created with AI support, but if everyone is having a go, the quality is going to be as variable as all of those people having a go at it. And this is a guy called Chris Ashworth, and he is an expert in his field. He works in the technical sphere of live theatre, and he has used generative AI to code and create very niche programs for lighting and audio that he says would not be done without these tools. They are too niche and too time consuming for anyone to develop them from scratch without this assistance. And you can see this is a TikTok where he is admitting through gritted teeth that this is a cool piece of technology that could be transformative in his line of work. But he also warns that that usefulness comes through its use in the hands of a trained professional. And he helpfully, I think, compares it to using power tools. A skilled handyman with a power saw will do wonderful things. If I pick up a power saw, I'm not suddenly a skillful carpenter. I'm still a clumsy idiot, and I'm probably going to chop my fingers off. So they also tell you it's going to make you more productive. You boost your resources, your capabilities, more productivity gains, better for the economy. Great, great, great. But it's really just more produced. And sometimes actually, unfortunately, multiplying by 0 does get results, because you do get things being created and they're not necessarily good things. Another quote from Chris Ashworth is that it can take a person who is a bad programmer and make them faster at making bad programs. Like, that's not good news. And we are seeing plenty of slop being created. It should be quality over quantity, but even the Washington Post is getting involved in this when they're not firing their reporters. The idea here was producing personalized podcasts for individual subscribers. If you are producing at that kind of scale, who is reviewing the work? Apparently no one, except their users who complained. And all this rubbish that's being produced is going to end up polluting future models that pull from readily available content. And then we get this problem called model collapse. Womp womp, sad trombone noise for the AI developers. This is the way they want to counter all these issues. They put a human in the loop, and then that solves all your problems. You don't let the AI run around unsupervised. Job done, grand. But I'll do you one better. I think it should be expert in command. Generative AI has been compared to an overeager intern prone to bullshitting. And you can't catch that out if you're not paying attention and you're not familiar with the work that you've given them to do. So I actually have a real life example of this. My friend in publishing many, many years ago, predating generative AI, had an eager intern, and she gave him the assignment of transcribing her interviews, which is dull, tedious work, the kind of stuff that these days is handed over to generative AI. And he just made up quotes. He just put stuff in that transcript that was not said in the interview. She had conducted the interview. She knew that he was making this stuff up. So because she had the expertise and the knowledge to know when he was faking it, she knew to come back to him and say, where did you get these quotes from? These did not exist. So these systems are the same. They work best if you're using them for materials or subjects you are already familiar with, and when you are available to review the outputs. So if you're producing at scale and you can't review the outputs, there's going to be issues there. Washington Post wouldn't be releasing all those podcasts if they also had to have someone QAing them all, which they didn't. So we want trained supervisors with executive control really here. And then the other myth that I'm going to bust is this one about adoption. Everyone's using it. Don't get left behind. This is the narrative that we get from the company selling us this. But forced adoption is not true adoption. And this approach is fueling pushback and aversion to AI. I have never seen the public turn so quickly on a technology as I have seen with AI. And that's a healthy, critical point of view, I think. But it's not necessarily people being allergic to change or afraid of something. It's the critical users that we find are skeptical. It's the educated users. So this is an overview of research published in the Journal of Marketing. And they found 7 studies which demonstrate that people with lower AI literacy are more receptive towards AI. They attribute this to people with lower AI literacy being more likely to perceive AI as magical and experience feelings of awe. They are thinking it's a reasoning, thinking, magical thing. They're not thinking it's been programmed and it's pulling from data sets, and that's how it all works. But unfortunately, because this is for marketers, this is by marketers and for marketers, their conclusion was that educating the public about AI is a bad idea, as it would stifle adoption. It actually suggests companies may benefit from shifting their marketing efforts and product development towards consumers with lower AI literacy. In addition, efforts to demystify AI may inadvertently reduce its appeal. You can see this in AI advertising. A lot of it, they position people as absolute dummies. Like, I'd be insulted if this was the perception of me by an advertiser, but they're putting it out there willingly. And all of this begs the question, why is this fragile, risky, error-prone, flimsy, flawed, incomprehensible, costly, energy-sapping, environmentally destructive, disliked technology so readily and broadly available? And in some cases, as I have had workers say to me, being shoved down their throats. Because we are the guinea pigs. We are doing free QA, quality assurance, for trillion-dollar companies. This is a big beta test, and we're all taking part of it. And there's nothing short of an aggressive amount of pitching for AI technologies being aimed at educators. So you've got teachers, vulnerable and exhausted post-COVID. They were some tough years you guys went through, suddenly being offered AI as a quick fix that solves all of their problems. So tempting, but buyer beware. The education market is a test bed for enterprise use. The kind of money that these companies need to make to justify the level of unprecedented investment that's been made into AI isn't ever going to be in education, because these sums will not add up. It could be realized in the long term of securing a lifetime user out of a kid who takes up early adoption, very early stage of life. But that long game is long, and sustaining the interest of a volatile investment market is not guaranteed. And I've seen this play out with technology. They may have long-term goals, but they flip on them quite quickly because it's all about following the money. And we've had tech in the classroom promises unfulfilled by tech giants before. I don't know if any of you is familiar with the One Laptop Per Child program. This existed in 2005 to 2014, and it was a non-profit initiative to bring low-cost laptops to every school student in the world. And it was funded by the likes of Google, AMD, eBay, Red Hat, News Corp. Some suspicious investment in there. This study that's presented here followed 531 primary schools in rural Peru over 10 years and found the program delivered no significant effects on academic performance, primary or secondary school completion, or university enrollment. They concluded that while students' computer skills improved significantly, their cognitive skills didn't, and that teachers, although trained, did not improve their digital skills and showed limited use of technology in classrooms. And I think that what that demonstrates is that there was a missing element of substantive pedagogical support. And this program has been widely criticized. But this is not me saying AI is bad and terrible and stay away from it. It's not an anti-AI pitch. I just want people to AI responsibly and proceed with caution and know what you're dealing with. Because then if we responsibly work with this technology, we can avail of the promising applications that it bears, like large scale data analysis. It's absolutely brilliant in that. It's a pattern matching technology. Assistive human in the loop tools, expert in command is what I would prefer. Domain specific AI, making it more limited. This idea of general purpose, like get real, I really don't see that happening in any material, substantive way in the near term. And accessible, flexible, and personalized learning. There's definitely opportunities to be unlocked there. I cannot deny that. But my willingness to go along with AI is less yes and more yes but. I think we need to ask questions, further our understanding, and all that is paramount to the responsible rollout of these technologies. And we can look at very different approaches from two different countries here. Estonia is very, very yes into AI. Last year, they began rolling out licenses for AI platforms to students aged 16 and 17, as well as teachers. It's integrated into the learning process entirely. Even PE as a subject is incorporating AI, apparently. But this is the Estonian Minister of Education, Kristina Kallas, and she says, you should not put all your trust in technology. You should put all your trust in teachers. What this is about is trying to introduce AI in a supervised learning environment in a controlled way with teachers as a guide and as a support. Now, Estonia is kind of an outlier. There's not many countries can compare themselves with Estonia in this respect. They are very advanced in digital literacy. They're on their second generation of kids growing up using digital technology in school. So they've got parents with experience with this actually guiding the kids as well. It's a very different example, though. Another extreme is Colombia. So students in rural Colombia started using Meta's AI chatbots in 2023. And it was Meta's AI specifically that took hold with Colombian students because they designed their apps to work with less sophisticated phones and patchy connectivity, which is quite common across Colombia. They also have rather a controversial agreement with telecommunication companies in Colombia that actually limits people on cheaper data plans to using specific apps like theirs. Highly controversial. Now, as you can see, the teachers began blaming the tech for low grades and failing exams, but that's actually not what interested me in this story. I was more interested in learning about teachers' creative ways to engage students beyond chatbot regurgitation, because that is a huge challenge now, because you have to make sure that they're learning to learn, not just learning to copy and paste from a chatbot. And one philosophy and religion teacher used role-playing and has students debate complex, hyper-local topics. They act as a local mayor, a company executive, a priest, other stakeholders in this debate, and it's a completely oral exercise, so they can't rely on a computer to give them support there. Another chemistry teacher scrapped all homework, has her students do all their study and work in front of her in the classroom, where she can make sure they're using their minds to figure things out. And this isn't just happening in Colombia at all. This is happening everywhere. You can push back and conduct your own experiments as an educator here. There's a lecturer in RCSI who is posting on LinkedIn about giving an undergrad's program an essay assignment that required them to critically examine health in their specific locality and back it up with multimedia like photos and video. This is something a generative AI system could definitely assist them with, but it won't be able to produce the work entirely for them. The substance of the essay will have to come from them and come from them interacting with the world that they inhabit as well. And I'm sure it actually made his job of reviewing those essays a lot more fun because he was getting bored reading chatbot regurgitated rubbish. So if you need students to compete non-Gen AI work, make them think local and be specific like this guy. Make them gather resources as well and vet that those resources are real, not your fake Bobcat from earlier. This is a very long word to try and fit in a slide, so I had to hyphenate it. There was no chance. But Dr. Mary Aiken from the Alan Turing Institute was in Dublin recently for Safer Internet Day, and she presented her research on primary school students' interactions with AI. That's where she does her research. And she said that inevitably in the workshops that she hosted, kids were more interested in interacting with the art materials over generative AI. And she said, choices in context are as much about the tools available as the tools themselves. And I think that's a really good point to bear in mind. You don't have to put the technology first. Put the work at hand, the job at hand, the task at hand, the learning outcome at the top. Put the kids' interest at the top as well. And if tech fits into that framework, great, but maybe something else would be better. Don't make it your default just because it's there, because the kids might actually respond to something else as well. Watch your language. I've obviously been cursing throughout this entire presentation and at the top as well. But what I've been getting at this whole time is how we talk about technology really matters. I mean, this is my whole job is being worried about this kind of thing and language. And I don't think we should adopt the language of marketers here. If instead of artificial intelligence, it was called complex information processing or probabilistic automation systems, I don't think we would be talking about it half as much as we are. We wouldn't have nearly as many headlines about it. But we need to be clear in our language to give clarity and understanding and demand clarity from others. Whenever you hear platitude like AI is everywhere, everyone should be using AI is here to stay, these are quotes that are made all the time, challenge people on what specifically they mean by that. Like, which AI? What types of AI? Being used in what kind of ways? Because that's too broad a statement. We wouldn't allow someone to say, technology is everywhere, technology is inevitable, technology is here to stay, and make that a headline, because that's boring. Yeah, of course it is. Like, tell me more. So if you do that, you might find that what they've said isn't actually that impressive or insightful. You'll quickly notice that people are making empty statements there. And, oh, that's a bit of a mistake. AI literacy, digital literacy, media literacy, you name it, we need it. The marketing machine behind AI is running rampant, and it's supported, unfortunately, by a media ecosystem that's not prepared to unpick the spin from the story. Not everyone is a science writer, and not everyone has a grounding in these kind of technologies to be able to write competently about this subject. We see humanizing language crop up all the time. They've borrowed that from the people who are speaking to them the most about AI, which is the people selling it. And the chatbots don't help either. In a recent study by the European Broadcasting Union, evaluating 3,000 responses from ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, and Perplexity, nearly half of these chatbots misinterpreted news or failed on key criteria like accuracy and sourcing. Because we all know true literacy is knowing that there's actually no such thing as a source of pure, unbiased truth. And no amount of computational power is going to unlock that. True literacy acknowledges that information seeking is a skill, and it's one that involves the application of knowledge and expertise. Knowledge and expertise that you can't shortcut. You have to do the work. There's lots of people who say, oh, I read Dostoevsky because I got an AI to summarize it. It's like, I don't think you know what reading is. AI needs experts. We desperately need educators and people who love learning, people who are passionate about becoming an expert in something by doing the process, by doing the work to get this right. That is how we get to navigate our digital futures responsibly. See what I did there? It's the theme. AI needs teachers, really, because they are exactly those kind of people. So now that I've buttered you up and said that you're really, really important here, this is my time to plug my own stuff here, but I'm also going to plug something else. So there are resources out there that you can absolutely engage with that give this kind of more grounded, critical, skeptical view of AI. And one that I would definitely recommend is not mine. It's a podcast called Enough About AI. It's by Donald Mulligan out of DCU. And I can't remember Kieran's second name, but a guy from the Institute of Strategic Dialogue who studies misinformation and disinformation. But they give a fantastically accessible overview of this technology to begin with, and also the new developments that are coming on stream. And then I will also say, for tech's sake, we talk about AI a lot. We talk about technology in ways that we try to make accessible, and we talk about technology in ways that we try to center people and communities, because we love when technology is about people making things, crafting things, sharing things, like the original spirit of developing things and putting them online. And I also host the Connected AI podcast, more of a business bent to this one, but certainly I'm bringing the skeptical voice into the mix there as well. And that's me. I have finished in great time. I must have gone at rapid speed there. I'm really, really sorry if you missed anything. But as I said, feel free to reach out and be in touch. Don't be a stranger. These are my contacts, platforms and information. And this is all my own work, not produced by AI, except that one definition that I said was from Google AI Overview. Thank you so much. We'll do some questions. Do you want to do a few questions?
Do you think it would help greatly if instead of saying AI in the classroom, that teachers would say generative AI?
100%. I've been trying to do it myself. Now, it's quite hard to do and to change your language, especially when there's defaults there to rest on. But anytime I'm on TV or on radio talking about these things, I try to be specific. Like when people say AI in the question, I'll say generative AI. I try to say processing and that it's giving outputs. I don't talk about it giving answers, giving results and thinking. And I'm trying really, really consciously to do that, because the way language works, it kind of just, it seeps into your brain nearly unconsciously and you just pick it up. And that's a beautiful, wonderful thing about the human brain. So you do have to be conscious about changing your language there, but I really do think that it helps a great deal.
I think if everyone in this room made a commitment to calling it Gen AI, there's a start. Let's do it. No, just do it. There's 100 people who'll do it. Just do it.
That's our new hashtag.
Yeah, it's not a question. It's not a question. It was an order.
Sorry, her.
No. If there's no other questions or anything, if I explained everything so beautifully. Like I said, I am available, always interested to chat about these things. And if you don't agree with what I said, also get in touch with me. I would love to hear from you. I'm always interested in other perspectives.